Warning. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. The ideas and perspectives shared here are based on research, personal interpretation, and speculation. They are not intended to be taken as proven fact, medical advice, or psychological guidance. If you have experienced trauma or are struggling with your mental health, I encourage you to seek professional help and support. Your discretion is advised, as some topics discussed may be triggering. Were you born prematurely? Did you have some kind of early childhood surgery? Were you sent to get testing done at 18 months old because you were walking, talking, reading early? Do you have blonde hair and blue eyes, an IQ of 130 or higher? Were you in the gifted program? If so, you're going to want to watch this video because this rabbit hole just got really deep and dark. If you've seen my last two videos, I talked about this article that was released in the 90s called The Illuminati Formula Used to Create an Undetectable Total Mind-Controlled Slave. And I was able to draw a lot of correlations between Monarch Programming, which is an offset of MK Ultra programming, and the gifted program, or children with very high IQs. So today I want to talk about another rabbit hole I've been going down since I uncovered what Monarch Programming was and all of the strange similarities. And that is gifted children and our relationship, or shall I say, our fear of water. So I made a video a couple of months ago when I was just going down the gate rabbit hole, when I first had my memories reawaken in me back in May. I always knew that I was in the gifted program, or the gate program, or tag program, whatever it was called at your school. I knew I was in this program, but I had forgotten about it for about 30 years. Gifted and talented education. And in order to test into this program, you had to have an IQ of 140 or higher. You were separated into small groups and taken out of the classroom. A lot of gate kids or gifted kids remember listening to the Gateway tapes. A lot of us remember the pink drink. A lot of us also tested in the top 5 percentile of our classes. And a lot of us were really gifted in the creative and performing arts. Now, I believe there are many reasons that we could have been selected. And I want to just share a quick disclaimer with this video. None of this information I'm sharing with you today is proven. It is all alleged, based on survivor testimonies and research from former victims and handlers. It's all documented in this article, The Illuminati Formula Used to Create an Undetectable Total Mind-Controlled Slave by Cisco and Fritz Springmeier. They have done a lot of work with mind control and the 13 bloodlines that rule the world. And he worked with victims. And the foreword of his book is really kind of gave me chills, is talking about how mind control is done on such a mass scale. And if you look into these government documents and people involved in our very own military, it's kind of disturbing, especially when stuff comes out years later, the kind of things that these people are accused of. Michael Aquino, for example, I've talked about him in a couple of my other videos. There's no direct evidence linking him to the creation of the GATE program, but somebody sent me information the other day that his mom was part of the gifted program studies. The person who made the IQ test was Louis Terman, and he was a specialist in eugenics. Allegedly, he was doing the longest run study on gifted children, which included Michael Aquino's mother. And Michael Aquino is a known Satanist who formed the Temple of Set, who got in trouble for things he allegedly did to little people. Also co-wrote a book called From Psyops to Mind War, which was about using mind control instead of mass weaponry or dropping bombs. So if you look at our world today, it starts to get really eerie, especially if you're one of the few people who's also gone down the rabbit hole of reading this 500-page article like I have. It may have very well blown your mind, or even if you've read bits and pieces of it, or you are considering reading bits and pieces of it, it may actually blow your mind. So I'm giving you a massive disclaimer, because if you truly are a victim of Monarch Programming, this stuff can actually break you, or bring you to tears, or push you into a psychosis, because it's extremely startling to read some of this stuff and realize that every single bit of your life feels like a lie. and that it brings up a lot of questions like, okay, everything that I am now, everything that I love, everything that I'm into, is this a version of me that somebody else created, or is this really me? So I'm getting a little off topic here because what I wanted to talk about was water and gifted kids and their relationship with water. So I made a video a couple of months ago when I was first starting to dive down this rabbit hole of the GATE program, where we were talking about this common phenomenon that came up with a lot of gifted kids, where a lot of us feared water or had a near drowning experience regarding water. And there are also a lot of us who sleptwalked or astral traveled, and water was also involved in a lot of our dreams, or traveled to other dimensions where we may have been underwater and seen sharks or dolphins, or had a big interest in those things. Or if you're like me, maybe you sleptwalked often and ended up in a bathtub, very strangely. I remember a handful of times very vividly that I was sleepwalking and I ended up waking up and coming to consciousness when I was in the bathtub. Now, that by itself is not extremely strange unless you have the Illuminati and preferred bloodlines writing the psychology reports of what is normal for children. But let's just play devil's advocate for a second, because if the Illuminati and these elite bloodlines are already infiltrated into our medical system and they're the ones writing the psychology of what's normal, how do we know it's normal? And how do we know it's not some sick, twisted form of what they want to be normal? Because a side note, a lot of these gifted children that I have talked to personally and things I've personally experienced myself, a lot of us have SEX trauma as children. And whether that was by an adult, a family member, or other children. And what I find very interesting is that there's literature out there, psychology literature, that says it's normal for children to experiment with each other. Now, I used to take that with a grain of salt and be like, okay, I guess it's normal. Children are curious, whatever. But now that I'm an adult and reading it in the context of this article and everything else I've discovered about how a lot of these high positions in society have been infiltrated by occult organizations, it really makes you wonder, is it really normal, or are children just recreating something that they've experienced elsewhere? Something that is a result of some very deep childhood trauma. So let's backtrack a little bit. Let's get back to the main theme of gifted kids, early childhood trauma, Monarch Programming, and water, and why we might have an inherent fear of water. So I was today years old when I found out that water was something that a lot of survivors and former mind-controlled monarch slaves mention in their testimonies, being afraid of water and early childhood conditioning involving water. So going back to what I said in the very beginning about premature births and children who had early childhood surgery, fear of water could be one of the very first things that they did to fracture our identity. Because according to this article, identity fracturing happens literally as an infant, the first day you're born. So if you're born in a hospital, just think about it. You're a baby who's been, in theory, comfortable in your mother's womb. Maybe you came from another world and you were from another planet where, you know, if other planets are real and there's aliens and all this stuff and our souls are infinite, then maybe you came from a really loving place. Or maybe you're just a clump of cells without a soul that just came from nowhere. But you're born into this earth and you're thrown into a doctor's office, immediately grabbed by a nurse or a doctor who cuts your umbilical cord. And if they're a boy, maybe they cut off your skin. Then they're gonna hand you off to a nurse who's gonna prick your heel and squeeze it to get some blood out. They're gonna rub you with a blanket to make sure you're breathing, that you're not purple. Probably gonna send you to God knows who else to do more tests on you because it's for the health of the baby, right? Now, I don't know when they start giving early childhood shots, but that's another form of trauma, being poked and prodded with needles, especially if the number is up to 75 now. That's absolutely insane. What is even more insane to me is thinking about our relationship as humans to the medical world. Like, why do we need all these synthetic ingredients and pharmaceutical substances to be okay? I mean, some of you argue with me and say, well, our lifespan was a lot shorter back then. But you could also say, yeah, people have health problems a lot younger now, and they're just getting treated by big pharma, and they're on medication for the rest of their life and completely dependent on big pharma. So is it really that our quality of life has improved? Maybe it has. So I don't mean to hate on anybody with medical issues, but I do have a lot of questions, and something that doesn't sit right with me inherently about how we operate as a society and all of the medications and hormones and synthetics that we just pump into people the second that they're born. Anyways, you'll understand my sentiment if you read this article too, because they mention so many substances and its effect on our minds and our brains, and how a lot of these substances put our minds in a state of hypnosis or dissociation, which makes it easy for us to be conditioned and controlled. So back to the water thing again, if you're a baby born by doctors, another thing that they may do when you're separated from your mother, could it be that the occultists who work in hospitals, or nurses who are trained by occultists that they don't know are occultists, because many of these occultists lead double lives, but they're high up in these orders of, like medicine and probably big organizations like WEF and CDC and like World Health Organization, all these things, okay? Allegedly, in theory, according to these articles and testimonies. But all these people have high up positions in society. They're writing the rules of what's normal, what's healthy. So how do we know that they weren't taking us as children and doing their occult rituals, like dunking us under water, or doing weird things to us during surgery, like flashing things in our eyes, or giving us vision tests, which is something that was done on me personally. And why I have a lot of questions and red flags is because I have so many fragmented memories, and I ended up in Alcoholics Anonymous like 10 years ago for the first time. I was a mess. I was having like panic attacks in the middle of nowhere. I was feeling so lost from life. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what my purpose was here. I was so depressed and broken. And I met somebody who had a glow about them, and they were sober. So I gave it a chance. I prayed to the universe. I said, okay, I'm not trying to get sober yet, but maybe this is the one thing I need to try to get better. So I did. I started going to meetings. And to my surprise, I actually got a lot better. And then I got clear-headed. Then I started meditating. Then I started to play with crystals and wear crystals and work with crystals. And then started developing my ESP, extrasensory perceptions, and realized, wow, I'm just incredibly sensitive and empathic. And I actually have clairvoyance, clairsentience, clairaudience. And I just haven't known how to use these skills and these things that I've had, that I was mistaken for everybody else talking to me. So imagine being a psychically sensitive person in this world, and you're getting hit by all of these cues, all of these thought forms, all of this subtle energy from the people around you, but you're not recognizing that a lot of it is coming from them, that they're projecting onto you, and you're kind of taking it and absorbing it like a sponge, and you're not taught how to set appropriate boundaries or filter out what is your feeling from theirs, because you're always around people and you're always in survival mode. So you start taking on their identities as your own, and then you become depressed. And the only way you know how to numb yourself is through substances, through escaping, like escaping through a relationship or a movie or substances or work or whatever your form of escapism is. A lot of these things in the article kind of like triggered a lot for me. And speaking of triggers, a trigger for a lot of Monarch survivors and former victims are water droplets. Now, the way that these handlers program children when they are literally infants, like whether they're in the hospital or they're going to the doctor for testing or they're getting early childhood surgery, which again is very traumatic, the bright lights in your face, the sterile environment. Are they pumping you with chemicals and drugs and needles? Are they bathing you? Are you being handled roughly when you're being bathed? So when you start to think why a lot of us might have a fear of water in these harsh environments, like we're literally straight from a wound, and your mind is so programmable. That's when Monarch Programming begins. It splits the altar right then and there. So none of us, we didn't even have a chance if this is true, if this is happening, which there's a lot of evidence that supports that maybe it's possible that this is. The amount of trauma that people on my channel have shared is quite frightening. More of us have trauma than don't have trauma. And a lot of us are being treated with pharmaceuticals to cure our depression and anxiety, and then we're being told that we're neurodivergent, something's wrong with us. Yet let's look at the history of what some of these people have allegedly been through, and then the why behind why we might have been through these things. You know, because an elite organization of groups that run society are trying to create the ideal race of blue-haired, blonde-eyed children, and all of these secret projects that have been carried out. It was Britain and Germany who made an alliance, and they were trying to breed people. But let's just say, if you're watching this and you have German and English bloodline, maybe you were bred to be the ideal race, especially if you have a high IQ, because eugenics and a lot of these people who took part in the programming believed that intelligence was passed on through genetics. So they're trying to breed the ideal human race of smart people and chosen ones, as they call them, which kind of gives me chills right now, because that's some kind of narrative I'm hearing a lot in the New Age community. Or is it victims of Monarch Programming who have been programmed on a mass scale and we're all dissociating at the same time? Crazy chills right now. We're all dissociating at the same time, thinking that there's some kind of spaceship that's going to come down and save us. Or like me, you have a whole fantasy world of aliens because you just can't deal with reality. That's a tough pill to swallow. But are we all having a collective dissociation right now? And we're looking at what's happening in the world, like all these people warring, looming threats of nuclear war, the New World Order in 2030, possibility of aliens, not to mention every single TV show that we all seem to be obsessed with are thrillers and documentaries about murder and all of the negative, violent things. And then I could even use, a respected adult in my life as an example. Every time I look over at them on their phone, they're watching those cop videos where there's a cop fighting with a civilian, and I'm like, wow, your algorithm's just feeding you that and feeding you with that, and now you hate cops, and now you're becoming a little more angry during the day, and I think it might have something to do with what you're watching. Which brings me to my next point. In this article, they mention a lot of shows and movies that are involved in this supposed Monarch programming. So let's paint a picture real quick. You're one of the chosen bloodlines. Maybe you were bred by parents who were influenced somehow, genetically or through their own set of handlers, to meet and make you. So now you're born, you have a doctor who might also be part of this program, because this doctor is trained by people who are higher up. This doctor may just be a normal doctor thinking that they're teaching you that they're doing the best, right? Because they believe in medicine. But they're unknowingly suggesting things that you should do to take care for your child. For example, stroking your baby constantly, which is actually something that is mentioned in the article. In the first, 18 months of the baby's life, to be stroking them constantly helps them develop higher intelligence. So at 18 months old, when the baby's walking and talking early and they're young, because they've had a lot of that early touch and sensations, now they're ready to be broken by the handlers, and they get a childhood test done, allegedly in Monarch Programming, and then they're fall into one of three categories, and they go either into, maybe you're the acting category and you're the creative category, maybe you're a leader or teacher or revolutionizer, maybe you're a beta and you're a caretaker and you're a sensitive person, maybe you're the rebel. Whatever you are, they can tell, supposedly, by one personality test that they developed and give to all children, allegedly at 18 months old. So now you're set down a different path in life. A lot of childhood trauma is happening in these testing rooms. Are our parents there? Are they watching? Are they secretly passing these kids off to other experts who are making them watch flashcards and movies and ink blots and whispering things in their ears and hypnotizing them? Or worst case scenario, some kind of abuse. Is that happening when the parents are gone? And then are they calling it just normal childhood stuff? Because they also have psychologists involved and doctors involved. And if these doctors and psychologists can normalize abuse, well, that's just fine. These parents are unknowingly spreading this abuse. Let me give you an example of one form of ritualistic abuse is childhood humiliation. So let's say you're a child who doesn't want to poop in a public place because they're embarrassed by it. And now the doctor says, well, you can try this. Why don't you chase your child around with a sharp object and say, I'm going to put this up your behind if you don't go to the bathroom. So you as the parent are, oh, my doctor told me this. This seems like a way to help the child. But your child is so young and easy to fracture at this point that you're literally traumatizing the child that you love dearly by threatening to put something in their. So that by many means could be considered abuse, and it's kind of messed up when you think about it. Yet, as I was saying, parents and doctors might all be well-meaning because that's how deep this stuff could go. The handlers have handlers, have handlers, have handlers, have handlers until you get up to the top of the pyramid. That's why they call it the enlightened ones are up on top, right? Are you still with me? Because this stuff's getting heavy, not to mention it's very hot in my garage right now. Anyways, back to childhood programming. I covered some of that programming and how that can happen to us unknowingly and innocently enough, right? So then we're at that age where we're still like a sponge soaking up information, and basically you're literally a blank slate because this is what they've done. They have done childhood trauma to you if you were a preemie, if you were separated from your parents at birth, if you were taken out of the operating room early and passed off to some kind of handler. Now you have a fractured identity, so you are a blank slate, so they can program you. How do they program you? They put you in front of a TV, whether at daycare, at camp, at home, at school, under the guise of a Disney movie. Disney, who was involved in some weird stuff, by the way. So now they're having you watch Alice in Wonderland, where you're falling down the rabbit hole. Oh, geez, sound familiar? You are getting lost in a fantasy land. Okay, this one kind of hits home. If you saw my whole studio, you see why I'm like embarrassed by that one and why that one's hitting a little too close to home, okay? Because dissociation is a big thing for when it comes to Monarch programming, and a lot of us like can't face reality because we've had such abuse done to us as children, okay? And a lot of us don't remember. And anyways, so Alice in Wonderland and the Mad Hatter is supposed to represent all the different chaotic altars that we have within us. And that's what happens when we go down the rabbit hole inside of ourselves. So we're dealing with all of our different altars and our internal handlers, so to speak, which is protecting the blank slate, the middle altar, which I don't know who that is. If you're thinking of the movie Split, is it something like that where the beast is in the middle of it all? Are these altars different demons that they programmed into us through rituals? Did we have to be at the ritual for them to do it? Or could they have done some kind of mass ritual? Maybe they got our blood from the hospitals when we were young, so they didn't even have to have the children at the rituals that they do in the dark of the night. They could have just taken these cue cards with children and then put those, sacrificed it during rituals to their occult entities that they're trying to conjure up. And now there's curse lines on us because our blood was given because we went to a hospital. Could that be a thing? Anyways, let's talk about some other movies. Let's talk about Aladdin and the genie. Jinn, anyone? Have you guys heard of the desert jinn? The genie. Your wish is my command, which means you have a master. Not to mention that Aladdin was a street rat, and then Jafar was the evil Jafar, the sorcerer, magic carpet ride, kind of getting lost in a fantasy land, and your best friend is a monkey. I can relate to that because my best friend is a dog. So actually 4 of them. Anyways, Beauty and the Beast is another fun one. Beautiful woman, book smart, independent. The charming Gaston loves Belle. Everyone loves Belle. Bonjour, 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 bonjour. And then she gets captured by a beast, her abuser. Stockholm Syndrome, anyone? When they fall in love? Interesting. And it hits really close to home when you realize that every single relationship you've been in has been some level of abusive. So, yeah, that one's fun. Pocahontas has some symbolism in it. Something about the willow tree. Ariel, that's what I wanted to talk about. That was my favorite movie as a kid. So not only did it have the water element, they stole her voice. You know who else's voices they steal? Victims who are too afraid to speak their truth out of fear. Huh. Sorry, these are just all hitting so close to home for me, and I have to laugh about it. This one hits close to home for me because when I was involved with we'll just call them the secret society people, and
supposed handlers, sketchy people in my life that contacted me about a year ago. Interesting that all of this abuse happened, and instead of being able to talk about it or share it with anyone, these people lied about me, they lied about what happened. The cops got called on this guy 5 times for things that he did, and ironically, his best friend's dad was chief of police, and this guy doesn't ever get in trouble. One of those people who are Jekyll and Hyde, who are like really nice to people and really charming, but also at the same time, really angry, really abusive. But when they're abusive, it's kind of like one of those relationships where you're like, oh baby, I'm so sorry I hit you. You're the most beautiful baby ever. Like, can I give you something? Can I buy you something? Oh my God, let me write a whole show for you, and let me go do this thing for you. And I'm going to tell everyone how amazing you are because you're just so amazing. But come back to me, come back to me. Now let me slap you and let me hurt you, because that's what I do. That's what I'm programmed to do, because I'm probably a victim of this stuff too. So anyways, my whole situation was certain things happened to me. I told people and nobody listened. I felt like my voice was just gone. And then when I started to talk, it was like all these people came from the woodwork and were like spying on me online, like different profiles, like blank profiles that I didn't know. I'd block one, another one pops up. Somehow they always know what I'm doing before I do it. Just a lot of weird stuff happening online. So yeah, my voice was stolen, just like Ariel's. And then the other part of Ariel, which is a big one, is wish I could be part of that world. So kind of looking from the outside, wishing you were part of the world, which is how I felt my whole life. Looking out the outside world of all these regular humans who probably maybe don't have the trauma that I do. And I'm just like, how nice would it be to be normal? Just to like not read so deep into everything and not feel so helpless all the time about the state of affairs of the world. I wish I could just be a normal human that didn't have to suffer from anxiety, or, you know, an adult that wasn't like a giant child who's still trying to figure out how to make it in their life, right? Okay. So my life isn't that bad now, but I'm just saying I've struggled a lot in my life, whether I look like it or not. I can also relate to that feeling of being an outsider, and I think a lot of us can. So anyways, what do you guys think? Think you're a victim of this stuff? And if you are, what do we do about it? That's the most important thing. What are we going to do about it now? What can we do? Well, I got a couple different things I've been thinking about. Like, why are we all waking up at the same time? Are we aliens, extraterrestrials, indigo children, here to save the world, old evolved souls? We're born into bloodlines to be the curse breakers. At this time when they're trying to create a new world order, maybe we're here to usher humanity into the Ascension timeline, not the Apocalypse timeline. Or is that us dissociating from a world that is breaking apart? I don't know. That's where the mind F is. So I don't know what to think, to be honest with you guys. I'm just kind of like taking this a little bit at a time. That's what she said. And a little bit trauma. I'm just kind of going one day at a time with this and uncovering more things as I go. So that's one possibility. Maybe we are saviors or chosen ones, or maybe it was programmed into us. But this is one thing that doesn't sit well for me, okay? I made a video about handlers yesterday, and there have been many times in my life I feel like I was pushed onto the acting performer path, because as you can see, I'm very charming and charismatic. That's a joke. But I was also, you know, into acting, into writing music, performing on stage. I did comedy for a minute. I'm very creative, and I played music live for a handful of years. And every time I played with somebody else, I always ended up with these men who were very narcissistic and abusive, and I was just kind of like the beta wallflower, the like, oh, you hit me, I'm sorry for making you hit me, like that kind of personality, until I had this handler situation, and I literally almost broke down in psychosis when I read this article, which, you know, I don't know if I was supposed to read it. I don't know if it's an activation to read it, but I honestly think it was the outside intervention that I even read this, because it literally made me realize, like, holy crap, I can relate to all of this. And just because somebody can relate to it doesn't make it true. So there's a disclaimer. But it can also be really empowering if in fact it is true, because you start to unravel what was done to you, and you start to realize like this has all been orchestrated. And then you start to see through some of this stuff like neuro-linguistic programming and how people come into your life and how they copy everything you do. And where maybe on one hand you would have thought like you met somebody and you're like, well, it's a gift from God, the universe sent this person, we know everything. And then on this other side of things, yeah, they know everything too, because there's a profile on you and they've been following you your whole life, plus technology, they have profiles on you technologically speaking, and they can be everything you want because you've got accounts of who you are all over the internet, all over social media. It doesn't take a genius to put a profile together on you and then become everything that you're looking for. So again, more unanswered questions. And I think the point of revealing this information, articles like this, is empowerment. So you can wake up, and this stuff can be so heavy. And I don't recommend people jump into reading it if you don't have a solid support system, because it can easily push somebody into psychosis. But if you can find support system, like fellow Gates kids, fellow other gifted kids, like I was saying, like who relate to you. Maybe it's an internet community, maybe it's an internet support group, maybe it's real people in your real life who have been through this too. I think we find strength and healing together, which is one of the reasons why I supported my Gate group, or why I created my Gate group on Facebook. Now, side note, I would love for everybody to join and just have one giant thing, but due to, like, in order to protect our privacy in the group and protect the vibe of the group, we have to be discerning about who we allow in there, because we've already have some secret society type sketchy people try to influence members. But like there's other things we screen for, like we want to see your face and know who you are, because the whole point of a support group is like, I'm going to be real and raw with you, and I expect you to be real and raw with me. I'm not going to put myself, I'm already putting myself out here on YouTube to a bunch of strangers. So like, this is my service to humanity like that. But when it comes to private groups or support groups, I think everybody deserves a place where they can be vulnerable and feel supported with like-minded people. So if somebody doesn't let you into theirs, go make your own. Go make your own. Don't let that stop you, because you're Noah's Ark, baby. You know, build it and the people will come. That's what I did. I had no support when I started this journey, and I just was like, I'm gonna make a Gate video and talk about my experience as a Gate kid. And then that video has like 12K views now and like a ton of comments. And then my channel took off from that one video. Then people just showed up on my Facebook group, and now I have a support system. So the same can happen for anyone. And I think another thing to note is that we're all finding our tribe right now. Another thing I want to mention is that this is a number 9 year collectively in numerology, which means we're at a big cycle, end of a cycle in 2025. So 2026 is going to be the start of something new. And a lot of people have been talking about the year 2026, 2027, and 2030. Like, keep hearing all these big years. Bashar, I don't know how I feel about Bashar. Is he a plant? Is he real? Is he really channeling aliens? I don't know, but he mentions 2027. And I don't know, I always thought that there was an interesting perspective there. But again, I couldn't tell you exactly how I feel about Bashar right now. I think like there is definitely some value in his teachings. And I think sometimes, you know, when you look at it in context to all this other stuff we talk about on my channel, sometimes I have more questions. So I don't really know what to think. But I think at the end of the day, the one thing you can trust is your intuition. And that is what I want to focus on my channel. Even though I get down all these rabbit holes and I talk about trauma and talk about all this scary, deep, dark stuff, the point is that we're awake now and we know what's happening. If you're watching this channel, you are awakening, and I've planted a seed of consciousness in you. So what are you going to do with that consciousness? What I would like to do, what I would like to encourage people to do and do with the clients that I work with one-on-one is share tools of empowerment with you. So for me, for example, one of the ways that I woke up and developed my ESP again and used it for myself and not these occult organizations that are trying to get me to, you know, give my energy to abusive boyfriends or drain me by watching 8 hours a day of TV. I can take back my intuition. One, by stopping the use of substances, clearing out my body as much as I can, like eating clean from the earth as much as I can, limiting caffeine or giving it up completely, no substances. No medications for me, sunlight every day, no sunscreen. Sue me. I just don't trust big pharma, and I feel energized by the sun. I lived in Ohio, the Midwest, most of my life, and I had no sunlight there for like much of the year. I moved out to Arizona. I am so happy. I get in the sun like at least 15 minutes a day. I don't like worship the sun, but I think it's important that you get at least, you know, at least 15, 20 minutes of natural sunlight. If you want to put on sunscreen after that, go for it. But I think your eyes need a chance to absorb the natural sunlight. The sun has light codes. They're called neutrinos. Human design talks about that, which brings me to my next service that I offer, human design. Human design will help you look at your body graph, your auric field, your energy field, see where you have, see where you're psychic, because we're all psychic and intuitive on some level, but where are you psychic? Is it your head? Can you receive visions? Can you receive, are you clairaudient? Can you receive messages through the ears? Are you clairsentient? Can you feel somebody's emotions? Can you predict the future? Like, we all have different forms of ESP. Some of us are mediums and we can literally channel, you know, we can be the vessel to channel disembodied spirits. So that's why I like to look at human design. I don't think I mentioned astrology. Astrology is really important in helping us track the patterns in our life. We all are born with at a very specific time. These elite societies follow, like, they do their rituals during astrological portals. They're very much involved with what's happening with the sun and the moon and the planets. And that's why, you know, they're waiting at this time on the planet because of all these big alignments that we're having in the next handful of years and the shift of all these outer planets. So that's why a lot of this stuff is like happening now and in the next coming years versus why it took 30 years for it to manifest. And also why we're revisiting a lot of the themes that were happening in the 1940s. Roswell, Project Paperclip, Project Stargate, like all this stuff that was happening back then is coming back around. Nuclear war. Okay, now we have threats of it. So let's hope we don't go down that same path. So astrology is a big one. And also I am teaching a class on remote viewing and ESP development this month. Starts on the new moon on Virgo, August 23rd. I only have spots for 5 people. I will be the 6th. We're going to practice intuitive exercises together. I'm going to teach you how to remote view. I'm going to teach you how to do it safely and responsibly in a way that will protect you, because a lot of people jump straight into the gateway tapes. And I think like he does a pretty good job at teaching you how to protect yourself. And I don't think I hear a lot of people having negative experiences with the gateway tapes, but the gateway tapes also, literally, if you read the patent or watch my other video about don't listen to the gateway tapes, it copies our EEG waves and it syncs them together. So my question is, what is the gateway tapes syncing you to? Other CIA or government people that are going to have track of what's going on in your mind. So I want to teach you how to do this independently of that. I'm not going to play you a frequency or anything like that. I'm going to teach you all my methods and how I learned kind of like cold turkey or like raw dog without the use of external things like the gateway tapes. But again, if that's all you have, no judgment. I'm just skeptical about it because of what I've read on the patents and I don't trust it. So if you're interested in joining my class, I do have a few spots left and it's $444. It is an investment because you're going to have access to one session a week, an hour-long session plus 30-minute Q&A once a week. We're access to private Facebook or Discord group, whatever people decide on, and then access to me all month. Now, I just gained 100-something subscribers in the last day from that video that I made. So my inbox is blowing up and I don't have time to respond to everyone that messages me. And I'm getting to that point where I don't have time to respond to every single comment. But I will prioritize you if you're a paying client, because I need to pay my bills and I need to feed my dogs. So if you're a paying client, you will always have priority to my time and energy. So thank you for supporting this channel, for liking, subscribing, and sharing. I really appreciate it. And if you're interested in joining the remote viewing class, I do have a form. I'm linking it in my description. So thanks for watching. See you guys in the next video. And if you have any ideas for topics for future videos or more rabbit holes to go down, definitely let me know.